everyone, it's Richard here. It's time for a Multisystem2 development update. So in this video we're going to be talking about the Multisystem2, the hardware development so far, the design iterations of the enclosure. We're going to have some questions for you about what colors you would like to see in production. We've got the black and we've got some other color options you might be interested in. Your feedback on that's really useful. We're going to be talking about the features and the capabilities of the Multisystem2. We'll also compare that with Multisystem 1 and the whole multisystem ecosystem, because we've got a number of cartridges, add-ons, expansions, even slice trays you can put various other controllers and interfaces into for the Multisystem and the Multisystem 2. So we're going to dive into some of the technical aspects and some of the fun side of things, what you can play on it, what you can do with it. If you're new to FPGA Retro Gaming, this is the video for you. We're not going to be talking about price and availability just yet because we're gearing up for volume manufacture of the Multisystem 2. So in the next video, we'll be talking about availability, price, and all of those types of things. In this video, we're just going to stick to features and functions of the Multisystem 2. Okay, let's get into it. So if we take a look at the Multisystem motherboard, our first prototype was very good. We only had one tiny modification we needed to get everything up and running on this board. We tested all the cores, tested all the functionality. So for the production version, we've moved a few things around, made things a little bit easier to connect to. There are some option switches which we've moved to the edges of the boards, and I'll explain why that is in a minute with the enclosure. We've got a full-size SD card in there, and we've got all of the electronics for the FPGA ecosystem on the main motherboard this time. This is really where we always wanted to be with the Multisystem. So with the original design of the Multisystem, we used a motherboard and either the DE10 Nano from Jurassic, or we've now got an option to use the MiSTer Pi board. They're FPGA evaluation boards that can be plugged into the Multisystem 1 to produce a full consoleized FPGA Retro Gaming platform. But we always wanted to try and get to a point where we had everything integrated on one board. And that's really what the Multisystem 2 is doing. We've got a lot of extra features that we hope to implement new hardware in the future. So we've got a big expansion port on the side here. This has got another 40 extra I/O expansion pins that come out from the FPGA. And these were pins that were trapped on the original D10 and the MiSTer Pi because you couldn't get enough of those pins out. We've got a little bit more tracking here. This is a 10-layer board, so it's a pretty dense but compact design. Everything's on the top, so manufacturing is a little bit more straightforward than having a double-sided board. But the key to what we're trying to do here is to give ourselves expansion for Multisystem 2 in the future. So hardware expansion options will go into this port here. We're moving a few things around, but nothing too significant. We're making the front panel switches a little bit easier to access, and all of the LEDs, they were just put down on the prototype around the board, and they're all moving to the front. So I'll show you on the enclosure design of where we're putting everything, but that's really what we've done with the Multisystem 2. Around the back, we've got standard power in, 5 volts. We've got HDMI, we've got optical digital audio Toslink, we've got analog audio, we've got a mini DIN, so you can do all the functions that we were doing on the original Multisystem through SCART through the mini DIN. So you can use a mini DIN to SCART or mini DIN to component cables to be able to go into TVs and monitors that require the sync signal. So that's got a hardware combined sync signal as well as RGB video and audio as well, so analog audio. The sync on green switch, we've got the 15-way multi-purpose analog output, and what we've implemented on the Multisystem 2 is a RGB video output that can run 16-bit, 18-bit or 24-bit. A lot of the cores at the moment are transitioning over from 16-bit to 24, but not all cores are happy if you just run it in 24-bit mode. So we will have a couple of switches just over this side that you'll be able to flick to get the modes for 16-bit, 18-bit or 24-bit. over time, most of the cores hopefully will migrate to the new framework and be compatible with 24-bit, but we wanted to put in backwards compatibility for 16-bit because some cores may never get changed, might be old, and they may actually look better on certain systems running on those 16-bit implementations rather than converting over to the new framework. So that's a little bit of backwards compatibility and future-proofing. We've got the Ethernet on there as usual, so you can hardwire in a direct Ethernet, and you've got 2 USB ports at the back, so you can put in a wireless dongle, Bluetooth, that sort of thing. We didn't integrate Bluetooth or wireless on board because it adds a lot to the approvals process and the cost, and actually it's so much easier and cheaper to buy a small Wi-Fi dongle that you can choose to use wherever you want on the board, or not if you prefer not to use that. Around the front, we've got 4 ports angled, so this design took a little bit of inspiration from, say, the Atari Jaguar, which has got a curved front on the PCB, and just to make it a little bit easier to connect on all of those ports. The SD card in the middle is a full-size SD card, and that was done on purpose so you can actually have labeled up SD cards instead of the tiny little micro SD cards, which are a little bit tricky to use and also very, very difficult to label up. We've got the cartridge port on the front here, and that's backwards compatible with the original Multisystem, so you can run a range of cartridges that we've got available. We've even got the Saturn cartridge now that's about to go into production similar time to the Multisystem 2. Power on off switch, you can physically turn it on and off, and you've got the usual 3 option switches. You've got the user, the menu, and the reset button. And that's pretty much everything that we've got on the Multisystem 2 motherboard. We've stuck to the, obviously the original Cyclone 5 FPGA. We've gone for the ISSI LPDDR DRAM, and we've gone for the Alliance SDRAM modules because we find them very reliable. They were the ones used on the original Thoracic DE10, and we found that they are really good. Because of the better tracking that we can get on this board, we can also speed up the SDRAM memory interface. Not that it needs it, you really only need about 130 megahertz, but it's nice to know that we've got quite a high bandwidth on that SDRAM interface now. So we're running the tests up to 150, 160 megahertz to do just testing on this prototype board and the next production revision. Everything else is pretty much as per Multisystem 1. We've added extra connectors for the I2C port. So we've got 2 I2C connections, so you can run OLED displays and various other add-ons for the I2C. You can still add the real-time clock if you wish. And like I say, the big expansion connector on here is going to be hopefully used in the future by developers and by us for hardware, and also future expansion of the MiSTer based hardware platform. So that's the motherboard for the Multisystem 2. Where we left the case last time was something similar to this, and I was exploring designing the case with a clip-on cover which would cover the cartridge but also allow you access inside and maybe add future expansion. That was a reasonable starting point, and I got some really good feedback. Thank you so much if you gave any feedback on the case. Went through a few other revisions, so just testing out, see what it looked like being really slim with no other features on the front. And then eventually moving to a cartridge flap, which can flip up and down, which is really quite nice. And a little NFC card at the back. So I'll explain a little bit more about that in the second. What I realized here is that we needed some access on the sides, and that's what led to the next generation or next iteration of the case, and that's this one here. So now we've still got the cartridge flap that can hide the cartridge if you want, and we've got these side flaps that can pop off. These are really useful because in the future we can have expansion modules that do hardware expansion that plug into this side. We can have easy access to the USB port, and that's important because there are some upgrades you can have internally, which I'll show you in a second. And also you've got all the switches and things and the I2C if you want to add on OLED modules. So you could have easily extra expansion on this side as well, if you so wish. So that was the general idea with the case. Of course, we've got some color options. We're going to do it as black as standard. So as standard, will just produce the black, but we're also interested in what you would like to see from a color point of view. And we've done a few sort of tests just to see what it might look like in, say, a Commodore 64, the color brands for the Commodore range, maybe the Amiga. It looks quite nice. And you can have obviously these flaps in different colors that pop out. We've got a bright red, which is quite nice on as an option for the mix and match colors, or more of a nice blood red here, which is again quite a nice looking design. If you want to go for a little bit more bling, we've got some gold, we've got some Galaxy Gold and a Midnight Black, which is a Galaxy Black. That's quite nice. And also this one looks particularly great if you catch it in the light. This is a Galaxy Blue. So this is all of a Galaxy Blue with all of the extra side pieces on. And this one will allow me to show you a little bit more inside of what we've done for the case. So the case, the undersized little rubber screws, and we've got an access panel because there is a slice tray as well, which I'll show you in a sec. And in the top of the Multisystem 2, we've got expansion options for both Zaparoo, which is the NFC card reader, and we've got an SSD, which is a NVMe SSD that you can put into there. So we can just slide these in, click them down, and we can pop the Zaparoo reader in there. And that's why we've got this little slot at the back. So we can put NFC cards to be able to load games, and they just click in and click out again. And that's really nice if you've got certain systems that you want to be able to boot up. So you can leave the card in there if you wish. So if this was, say, a Commodore 64, you'd plug in, slide your Commodore 64 in the back, and that would load the core up and get it all ready. So you have to excuse me for these ones, but we've got other cards made up just really for our internal testing. These could obviously be done with really nice stickers, as they've done on quite a few of the Zaparoo projects. So we've got N64, we've got some arcade, we've got a menu core if you want to get back to the menu, and just slotting them in, clicking them down, really gives you a nice look and feel for the case, and allows you to load cores without having to press any menus or having to do any controls. You can just get into the cores. These can obviously load games individually as well if you want to. The cards as standards come just as a blank card, and you can program them to launch cores or games. You can also get little stickers. So if you want to get your real media, maybe you've got a real Super Nintendo cartridge, and you can just put this sticker on the back and then either tap onto the back of Multisystem 2 or use a card to be able to slide in to load a specific game. These little discs are also available if you want to put them inside your cartridges or inside your real media, maybe a CD-ROM that you just want to tap on to be able to load Monkey Island from CD very quickly with just a quick tap. So that's really what we're doing with the Multisystem 2 and the enclosure design. There's a couple more tiny revisions to do just to get everything in place for production. We're just adding in the LED guides at the front. So we'll have the LEDs for all of the ports for the USB, and we'll have the power and SD activity and the user light on the front there as well. We're going to make these are optionally available, so you won't have them as standard, and because not everyone want to use the NFC reader or a mass storage device. It's perfectly works perfectly well with just the SD card that you put in the standard, but if you want to have a large, say 2 terabyte storage, you can do that. These also connect all internally to the board on the USB as well, so everything's nice and compact and hidden inside. On the bigger expansion, as we had with the original Multisystem 1, we had a slice tray that sat under the Multisystem. So we had a tray that sat under there. It was quite a large tray, but you could fit electronics at the front and at the back. And what we've done with Multisystem 2, it's very similar. So we've got 2 of our control dock boards fitted into one of the slice trays. So you can access, for this one in particular, we've got Super Nintendo and Nintendo at the back. And we've got DE15 and DE9 ports with a little rotary switch. You can choose all different options from Neo Geo through to Mega Drive pads and various other things. Very low latency via USB. Obviously, the snack interfaces that we've done on cartridges are zero latency. They are the real control pads that you can plug straight in. And that's one of the real benefits of using FPGA-based retro gaming consoles, that you can actually get access to the direct connections into the FPGA via control ports. It's really the only way you're going to get something like a light gun working with emulation, because FPGA is hardware emulation or hardware simulation of the original console. And the only way you're actually going to be able to get light guns and things like that working outside of real hardware is to use FPGA-based synthesis to produce a system that can be accurate enough and low latency enough to be able to do things like light guns. Okay, so in the next video, we hope to have the final version of the Multisystem 2, and then we'll have production timescales and costs for the Multisystem, as well as some color options. But please do feedback what you would like for color options, because with 3D printing, we've got some wonderful things. We can have cartridges in all different colors, and we can have the Multisystem itself in a variety of different colors or different color options with these panels optionally fitted on. Of course, we'll make the 3D files fully available, so you can print your own, you can modify it, and you can enhance the design as you wish. That's pretty much it for the overview of the development status of the Multisystem 2. As soon as I've got any more information on timescales, costs, and availability for Multisystem 2, I'll get another video update for you. But right now, why don't we end this video with going through some of the gameplay footage on Multisystem 2.